When something extraordinary is about to enter your life, it rarely arrives with noise. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or grand gestures. Instead, it comes quietly, disguised as stillness, as emptiness, as waiting. You see, when God is preparing to give you something big, he first makes space for it. And that space often feels like loss. It feels like confusion. It feels like everything is falling apart. But in truth, it is falling into place. You may begin to notice the people you once trusted start drifting away. Things that used to excite you no longer do. The dreams you once chased may suddenly seem meaningless. And in that silence, you wonder if something has gone wrong. But that's the first sign the old version of you cannot hold what's coming. The person you were built, the life you had, but the person you're becoming will need a new one. And so the universe begins its quiet rearranging. There's a strange moment between endings and beginnings, a kind of sacred in-between where nothing seems to move. That is the waiting room of transformation. And in that stillness, most people panic. They try to fill the silence. They run back to what's familiar. But if you stay, if you breathe, if you trust the emptiness, you begin to notice something gentle moving beneath it all, a whisper that says, wait, because something greater is unfolding. Another sign is discomfort. When you are about to step into something larger, your old world starts to feel too small. You might feel restless. You might wake up one day and realize you've outgrown certain places, conversations, or even people, not because they are wrong or bad, but because you are expanding beyond what once fit. And it's uncomfortable. Growth always is, but discomfort is the soul's signal that something vast is approaching. You may find yourself questioning everything. Who am I? Why am I here? Why does nothing feel the same? These questions are not signs of confusion. They are invitations. When God is preparing to give you something big, he pulls you inward. He makes you sit with yourself. He strips away distractions so you can finally hear what has always been guiding you, the deeper truth, the quiet knowing that does not shout, but simply is. During this phase, solitude becomes sacred. You start spending more time alone, not out of sadness, but necessity. You realize that peace is not found in noise, but in stillness. You start enjoying your own company. You start noticing small things, the sound of rain, the breath in your chest, the light through the window. These are not random moments. These are signs of alignment. The more you slow down, the clearer the divine rhythm becomes. You will also begin to see synchronicities, those mysterious alignments that make you pause and smile. A word you needed to hear appears in a conversation. A book falls open to the exact page that speaks to your heart. You think of someone, and these are not coincidences. They are confirmations that you are being guided when you begin to move closer to your purpose. Reality itself starts to rearrange to support you. And sometimes, before the big thing comes, everything seems to collapse. You might lose your job, your relationships might shift, plans might fail. You think, why now? Why is everything going wrong? But that's the paradox. To receive something greater, your hands must first be empty. The universe removes what is no longer meant for you, not as punishment, but as preparation. Imagine a cup already full of water. If you pour more into it, it overflows, and nothing new can stay. The same is true for your life. You must be emptied before you can be filled again. And though emptiness feels painful, it's sacred. It means something divine is on its way. There's also a deep inner knowing that begins to awaken within you. You can't explain it, but you feel something is coming. You may not know what it is, but you can feel its presence. Like standing before dawn, you sense the light before it appears. That intuition, that quiet awareness, is another sign. God doesn't always speak in words. Sometimes he speaks through peace that makes no sense, through moments where you just know. And it's important not to rush this process when something big is being prepared for you. Time slows down. Everything feels delayed. Nothing seems to move forward. But delay is not denial. It is refinement. The longer you wait, the deeper your roots grow. And when the moment arrives, you will realize that what felt like waiting was actually shaping. Every second was necessary. Every silence had purpose. You may even notice that your desires begin to shift. Things you once wanted no longer pull at your heart. You start craving depth instead of attention, meaning instead of validation. And that is how the divine reshapes your soul, by changing what you long for. The new blessing can only arrive when you desire something pure enough to hold it. So if your life feels uncertain right now, if doors are closing, if people are leaving, if everything seems quiet, don't panic. That silence is not abandonment. It's preparation. Something vast is moving toward you. But it must find you empty enough to receive it. You are being stretched, expanded, refined. When God is about to give you something big, he doesn't make it easy, he makes it right. And what is right takes time. It takes surrender. It takes faith. When you cannot see, but when it comes, you will look back and understand why everything had to happen exactly the way it did. Because every ending was a beginning in disguise. Every loss was an act of love. And in that realization, you will see the signs were always there. The stillness, the discomfort, the waiting, the solitude, all were sacred messengers. All were pointing you to something beyond the ordinary, something divine, something meant only for you. When the universe begins to move in your favor, it doesn't shout, it whispers. It gives you moments, gentle shifts, small nudges that seem insignificant. But everything starts to align in ways you can't explain. You begin to meet the right people at the right time. You start hearing words that speak directly to what you've been feeling. And you begin to realize this is not coincidence. This is orchestration. Something divine is weaving the pieces together. When God is about to give you something big, you start to feel pulled in a direction you never expected. It may not even make sense at first. You just feel drawn. Your heart starts yearning for something you can't yet define. And that's how it begins. Not with clarity, but with a quiet calling. You might notice yourself losing interest in things that once consumed you. The endless scrolling, the constant noise, the need to prove yourself. They all start to fade. Because when the soul begins to awaken, it no longer seeks distraction. It seeks depth. It seeks truth. It seeks presence. And that's another sign. Your focus begins to shift from the external to the internal. You stop asking, when will it happen? And start asking, who am I becoming while I wait? Because the truth is, the gift isn't just what's coming. The gift is the transformation happening inside you as you prepare to receive it. You begin to notice beauty in simplicity, peace in the ordinary, a strange sense of gratitude, even when nothing seems to change. And that's the divine signal, because gratitude opens the gates of abundance. When you can thank God for what is, you make space for what's next. Sometimes Before the blessing arrives, life tests your patience. You might feel forgotten, unseen, ignored. But the divine works in silence. The seed doesn't grow the moment it's planted. It grows in darkness, beneath the soil, invisible to the world, yet alive. And that's exactly what's happening to you. You are being hidden, not because you are not ready, but because what's yours is being shaped in the unseen. People might not notice your growth right now. They might even underestimate you. Let them, because when God reveals what he's been building inside you, it will speak for itself. You will also begin to notice subtle signs of alignment, little miracles that reassure you. You might overhear a conversation that answers a question you've been asking. A stranger might say something that feels like a message meant just for you. A song might play at the exact moment you need it. These are the divine breadcrumbs leading you closer to what's coming. Another sign is peace that doesn't make sense. You may be surrounded by chaos, yet inside you feel calm. You feel steady. You can't explain it, but you trust it, because deep down you know this peace is not from you, it's from God. And it's his way of saying, I'm still here, keep going. Then comes the test of surrender, the hardest one of all, because surrender isn't giving up, it's letting go of control. It's trusting that you don't have to force what's meant for you. You just have to be ready for it. It's the moment you stop asking when and start saying whenever you will. I'm ready. That moment changes everything, because the divine only places something big into hands that no longer cling, hands that are open, empty, and willing. You might also notice that you begin to forgive, not because what they did was okay, but because you don't want to carry the weight anymore. And when you release resentment, you free yourself. Forgiveness is not weakness. It's a doorway. Every time you forgive, you rise higher, and that rising creates space for the new to arrive. The people who left your life, the opportunities that didn't work out, the silence you had to endure, they were all part of the clearing. Everything that left was making space for everything that's meant to stay. And you will begin to sense something else, a soft anticipation. Not fear, not doubt, but an awareness that something sacred is approaching. You won't know when, but you'll feel it drawing near, like the way you can sense rain before it falls, the way you can feel light before dawn. That's how divine timing feels. Subtle, but sure. And right before it happens, life often becomes the most quiet, almost too quiet. That's how you'll know, because calm always comes before revelation. The silence you're in now, it's the silence of preparation, heaven holding its breath before the breakthrough. The people who are meant for you will start returning or arriving effortlessly. Opportunities will begin to flow naturally. Things will start to connect in ways you couldn't plan, because divine timing is not logical. It's orchestral, every note, every delay, every detour, perfectly placed. And when that moment comes, when what's meant for you finally arrives, you won't need to chase it. You'll recognize it instantly. It will feel familiar, peaceful, whole, like something you always knew deep inside, because it was never outside of you. It was always growing within. You will look back and see that the emptiness was never punishment. It was preparation. The silence was not rejection. It was alignment. The delay was not denial. It was divine protection. Everything that didn't work out was guiding you toward what was. And when it finally happens, it won't feel like a surprise. It will feel like remembering, like coming home, because your soul always knew this was where it was meant to arrive. So, if you are in the waiting right now, if life feels quiet, uncertain, still, hold on. Something big is coming. Something sacred. Something that will make sense of everything you've been through. You are not forgotten. You are being positioned, and one day you will look back and realize every prayer was heard, every tear was counted, and every moment of waiting was a step toward the divine promise was always yours. When it finally begins to happen, it won't come with noise or sudden change. It will unfold softly, almost unnoticed at first, like morning light creeping across the horizon. One day, you will simply realize you are no longer waiting. You are living what you once prayed for, and it will feel calm, peaceful, right? Because when something is from God, it never feels forced. It just fits. You'll notice the air around you feels lighter. The weight you carried for years begins to fade. You'll find yourself smiling without a reason, waking up with gratitude instead of worry. And you'll think, when did everything shift? When did peace become my normal? And the answer will be, when you stopped fighting the process, when you allowed yourself to be shaped instead of resisting. That's how divine blessings arrive quietly, naturally, like breathing, like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. The struggle falls away and only understanding remains. But before that peace settles, there is one last test, the test of trust, when the blessing begins to approach. Fear often rises too, fear that it might disappear, that it's too good to be true, that you'll lose it like you lost before. But this time, you'll know better. You'll feel a calm voice within that says, you are ready now, because what's meant for you can't be lost anymore. The same pain that once broke you taught you how to receive. The same silence that once scared you became your teacher. The same loneliness that once hurt you became your sacred space. And now everything makes sense. You start to see that God was never testing you to see if you could survive. He was refining you so you could carry something greater. He wasn't withholding. He was preparing, because if he gave it to you before you were ready, you would have lost it. You realize now every delay was divine mercy. Every closed door was a redirection. Every unanswered prayer was an answer in disguise. Because life isn't punishing you, it's aligning you. And alignment sometimes looks like loss before it looks like gain. There will be moments when you'll sit in silence, not because you're waiting anymore, but because you're grateful. You'll look back at everything that once confused you, and you'll whisper, thank you. Thank you for not giving me what I wanted. Thank you for giving me what I needed. And in that gratitude, a new peace begins to bloom. A peace that isn't dependent on outcomes. A peace that lives within you, unshaken, constant. Because now you've learned the truth. The blessing was never the thing itself. The blessing was who you became while waiting for it. The new chapter of your life begins quietly. You'll find yourself walking into rooms that used to intimidate you and feeling calm, speaking truths you used to hide and feeling free, meeting people who see you, really see you, and realizing this is what alignment feels like. Not excitement, but peace. You'll notice divine timing in everything, the message that comes at the perfect hour, the opportunity that shows up when you least expect it, the moment you finally meet someone and think, this is why it never worked with anyone else. You'll smile, because now you understand the waiting was love in disguise. And maybe the biggest sign that you're about to receive something big is that you stop searching, you stop striving, you stop trying to make things happen. You rest, you trust, you move with the flow instead of against it. Because you finally realize what is meant for you doesn't need to be chased. It will recognize you just as you will recognize it. You'll begin to live with quiet confidence, not arrogance, but calm assurance, because you know now life is not random, it's divinely timed. And even when you can't see what's ahead, you know you're guided. Every step, every delay, every moment, purposeful. There will be times you'll look at the sky and feel tears rise without reason, because deep inside, you'll remember you were carried here through storms, through silence, through surrender, and yet here you are standing, peaceful, whole, and that's how you'll know the promise has arrived, not because everything outside has changed, but because everything inside has. And maybe the final sign, the most sacred one, is that you no longer ask for proof, you just live in trust. You no longer ask when, you just say thank you. Because now you understand how the divine moves slowly, perfectly, lovingly. When God is about to give you something big, he does not rush. He builds, he shapes, he strengthens, he softens. He prepares your heart to hold the weight of what's coming. And when it finally arrives, you will not be surprised. You will be ready. You will see how every ending was necessary, how every silence carried a message, how every tear watered your becoming. And you will realize that the greatest gift was never the blessing itself. It was the transformation that allowed you to receive it. And in that stillness, you will smile, because you'll finally understand that everything you went through was God whispering, I was with you all along. I was only preparing you for something far bigger than you imagined.
Imagine for a moment that life is not some grand achievement waiting in the distance, but rather a series of tiny steps, each so small that you barely notice them as you take them. Most people think the big events define them: the job, the relationship, the house, the recognition. But what they don't realize is that those so-called milestones are simply the natural consequence of countless invisible choices made in ordinary moments. The truth is, we become the product of what we choose again and again, day after day. It's not the once in a lifetime decision that molds you, but the mundane, repeated act you often do without thinking. Consider how we treat habits. We brush our teeth not because it changes anything overnight, but because doing it daily keeps decay away. It's the same with the mind, the body, and the spirit. A choice made once has little effect, but a choice repeated creates patterns, and patterns eventually become identity. The foods you eat, the conversations you engage in, the way you treat yourself when nobody is looking, these seem insignificant, but they silently accumulate into a destiny. Yet here is the strange part: because the consequences are delayed, most people dismiss the importance of small choices. Eat poorly today, and you will likely feel nothing tomorrow. Skip reading, learning, or reflecting today, and no one will scold you for it tomorrow. But extend this negligence across weeks, months, years, and the result is unmistakable: a body weakened, a mind dulled, a soul restless. On the other hand, nurture small disciplines, and though their effect is invisible at first, they eventually crystallize into strength, wisdom, and fulfillment. Think about it. Every time you decide to wake up early, every time you choose to pause before reacting in anger, every time you resist the easy pleasure for the sake of something meaningful, you are casting a vote for the kind of person you will become. No one sees the vote. No one applauds you for it. But slowly, silently, these votes gather until your life becomes the sum of them. What you call character is nothing but accumulated choices. What you call luck is often the harvest of past disciplines. The illusion that deceives nearly everyone is the belief that they can wait. They believe they can neglect small things today and somehow build a meaningful life later. But later never comes in the way we imagine. Later is only ever a repetition of what we choose now. If you waste the moment in front of you, you are rehearsing how to waste tomorrow as well. And the tragedy is, by the time you wake up to this truth, you may already be bound by chains you unknowingly forged with your own hands. So ask yourself, what are you practicing each day? Because practice does not only belong to musicians or athletes. Every human being is practicing life in some form. You are practicing patience or impatience, kindness or bitterness, growth or stagnation. Whether you are aware of it or not, you are rehearsing who you will become. And if that sounds overwhelming, let it also sound liberating. Because it means you do not need to change the entire future today. You do not need to climb the mountain in one step. All you need is to take one small step in the right direction, and then another, and then another. The tiniest shift, choosing water over soda, a book over a screen, silence over mindless noise. These choices seem too small to matter. Yet they accumulate like drops of water carving stone. The question is not, will your choices shape you? They already are. The question is, are they shaping you into who you wish to become? Every decision, however trivial it seems, is a brushstroke on the canvas of your life. And though each mark may appear meaningless in isolation, together they paint a picture that the world cannot ignore. So, if you want to know where your life is headed, do not look at your dreams or intentions. Look at your habits. Look at what you choose when no one is watching. That is where your future is being built silently, inevitably, day after day. We live as though time is an endless river flowing only for us, as if tomorrow is promised and next week is guaranteed. And yet, if you pause for just a moment and look honestly, you will see that nothing is ever truly yours except the moment that is happening now. Most people don't realize this. They spend their lives postponing, saying to themselves, I will start later, I will change later, I will live fully later. But later is a mirage. It always dances just a little further down the road, always outside your reach. And when you arrive at the place where you thought it would be, it is no longer there. Time is not some infinite storehouse that we can draw upon whenever we wish. It is more like grains of sand slipping through an hourglass, falling one after another, never to be retrieved again. The strange tragedy is that while we would guard our money, our possessions, our reputation, we are reckless with time. We throw away hours in distraction, days in procrastination, years in comfort. And only when the sand is nearly gone do we begin to realize its worth. Think about how easy it is to waste an afternoon, to scroll endlessly, to drown in noise, to let the hours slip away unnoticed. It feels harmless, almost natural. But each of those hours is a slice of your life, exchanged for nothing in return. And this is the cruelest part. You don't pay for wasted time in the moment, you pay for it later, when the opportunities you once had are gone, when the energy you once felt has faded, when the dreams you thought you would pursue have withered in neglect. We imagine we have more time than we do because the mind plays a trick on us. It whispers, "You are young, you are strong, you will always have tomorrow." But tomorrow is a story we tell ourselves to escape the weight of today. And while we tell that story, life slips silently by. The truth is that every day you live is one less you have. Every sunrise is a reminder that your time is moving forward, whether you use it wisely or not. Now, I am not saying this to burden you with fear, but to awaken you to freedom. When you truly see how limited your time is, a remarkable shift happens. Suddenly, you stop waiting for permission to live. You stop delaying your passions, your dreams, your love. You begin to see that the perfect time will never arrive, because life itself is the perfect time. The present moment is not a stepping stone to something else. It is the only stage where life actually happens. When you understand this, your priorities change. The petty arguments that consume you seem less important. The endless pursuit of things that will eventually fade loses its hold. What matters most is not what you own or how others see you, but how you are choosing to spend the moments you are given. For in the end, your life is nothing more than the sum of your moments. And isn't it extraordinary that the same hour wasted in regret could instead be filled with gratitude? The same day lost in distraction could instead be used to create, to connect, to grow. The same week squandered on what does not matter could instead be invested in what makes your soul come alive. You are not powerless in the face of time. You are its partner. Each choice is your way of honoring or dismissing the gift you've been handed. The most astonishing thing is that once you grasp this, urgency turns into clarity. You no longer postpone saying, "I love you." You no longer delay starting the project, learning the skill, taking the risk. You realize that it is not reckless to live fully now. It is reckless not to. Because waiting for some distant future is the surest way to miss the only life you ever had. So ask yourself, how many moments have already slipped past you unnoticed? And more importantly, how many more will you allow to slip away before you wake up? If you could see your life as a clock with hands steadily ticking down, how differently would you spend this very hour? That question is not meant to frighten you, but to bring you alive, here now, in this breath. Comfort has a way of disguising itself as peace. It whispers to you, "Stay here. You are safe, you are fine, nothing needs to change." And so, you stay. You stay in the job that drains you, the routines that bore you, the habits that slowly weaken you. At first it feels pleasant, almost reassuring, as if you have found stability. But in truth, comfort is a subtle prison. It locks you behind invisible bars and convinces you that outside those walls lies danger, uncertainty, and pain. Most people live their whole lives inside this prison, never realizing that what they called security was actually slow suffocation. The strange thing is that life never meant for you to stay still. Nature itself is always in movement. The tides rise and fall, the seasons shift, the stars drift across the sky. Nothing alive is static. Growth, by its very definition, requires change. But when you choose comfort, you resist this natural current. You build routines that numb you rather than awaken you. You avoid challenges that would shape you into more than you are. And the longer you sit in that comfort, the more unfamiliar growth begins to feel, until eventually even the thought of change feels threatening. This is why stepping out of your comfort zone feels like fear. It is not that the unknown is actually unbearable, but that you have become too accustomed to the familiar. Imagine a bird that refuses to fly because the nest feels safe. The nest is warm, but it was never meant to be permanent. It was only meant to prepare you for the skies. Yet so many cling to their nests, convincing themselves that flying is unnecessary, never realizing that in denying the risk, they are also denying the freedom. And here lies the real tragedy. Comfort doesn't just keep you from pain, it keeps you from potential. Every dream you have ever had, every vision of a life beyond what you know, lives on the other side of discomfort. You want strength. It will require effort. You want wisdom. It will require questioning what you think you know. You want freedom. It will require courage to break patterns that feel safe, but slowly erode your soul. Most people never see this because comfort is not dramatic. It does not shout at you. Instead, it erodes you silently. Days turn into weeks, weeks into years, until one day you realize that the life you hoped for never arrived, not because it was impossible, but because you never left the shallow waters. You settled for floating when you were built to sail. But stepping beyond your comfort zone is not about recklessness. It is not about throwing yourself into chaos. It is about recognizing that growth always feels uncomfortable at first, just as stretching stiff muscles feels painful before it brings relief. That discomfort is not a sign of danger. It is a sign that you are expanding, and in that expansion lies a vitality that comfort will never give you. Think about it. Every meaningful experience you have ever had required you to step into the unknown. The first time you spoke in front of others, the first time you dared to love, the first time you took a risk for something that mattered. Each of those moments carried fear, and yet, when you look back, those are the moments that gave you life. So why then would you imagine that your future will be built in safety? The future, if it is to be worth anything, will always ask you to be braver than your present. The truth is, discomfort is not your enemy. It is the doorway to transformation. The anxiety you feel when you try something new, the unease when you push your limits, the trembling when you risk failure, all of it is proof that you are alive and moving forward. Comfort, on the other hand, is silent decay. It numbs you while convincing you that nothing is wrong, until you look back and wonder where your life has gone. So the choice before you is simple. You can stay in the warmth of the familiar, repeating the same patterns until your last breath, or you can take the frightening, but liberating step beyond it. You may stumble, you may fall, you may even fail, but at least you will know you lived, that you stretched into the fullness of what you were meant to be. There is a hidden strength within you that you may never truly meet, unless you are willing to be tested. Most people live their entire lives skimming the surface of their own potential, mistaking comfort for fulfillment, mistaking survival for living. They assume that who they are today is the limit of who they can be. But deep within every person lies a reservoir of power, resilience, and creativity so vast that if you could glimpse even a fraction of it, you would be astonished at what you are capable of. The tragedy is that most never reach for it, and so they die having only lived as a shadow of themselves. You see, strength is not given, it is revealed. And it is revealed in those very moments you try so hard to avoid. The challenges, the struggles, the failures, the hardships. When everything is easy, you coast on the surface of your abilities. But when you are stretched, when you are cornered, when life pushes you beyond the point you thought you could handle, that is when something remarkable happens. A deeper layer of yourself awakens, and you discover that you are not as fragile as you once believed. Consider how a muscle grows. It does not strengthen by resting in comfort, but by being strained, even torn, only to rebuild stronger than before. The same principle applies to the human spirit. When you face difficulty and keep moving, when you fall and rise again, when you push one step further than the voice of fear says you unlock parts of yourself that would have remained forever hidden. Without resistance, there is no strength. Without testing, there is no discovery. Yet here is the paradox. Most people spend their lives running from the very conditions that would reveal their greatness. They avoid discomfort. They fear failure. They cling to safety. And in doing so, they never meet the version of themselves that is waiting on the other side of struggle. They think they are protecting themselves, when in truth they are imprisoning themselves. They never realize that life's challenges are not there to destroy them, but to introduce them to their true power. Imagine for a moment what would happen if you stopped underestimating yourself. If instead of saying, "I can't handle this," you leaned into the difficulty with curiosity, asking, "What strength within me is waiting to be discovered here?" Every hardship, every obstacle, every test becomes not a punishment, but an invitation to expand, to deepen, to rise. And it is not only in crisis that this strength shows itself. Even in ordinary moments, there is untapped potential that you rarely call upon. You are capable of far more patience than you use, far more creativity than you express, far more love than you allow yourself to give. You have reserves of wisdom that only emerge when you quiet the noise long enough to listen. You have courage that only awakens when fear tries to hold you back. And the remarkable thing is, the more you tap into this hidden reservoir, the more it grows. But you must be willing to test yourself. You must be willing to go beyond the limits you have unconsciously set for yourself, because the boundaries you believe in are often illusions. Lines drawn by fear, reinforced by habit. And when you step across them, you discover they were never real at all. The only real limits are the ones you accept. This is why those who achieve greatness are not necessarily the strongest, the smartest, or the most gifted. They are simply the ones who dared to go further. They were willing to exhaust the surface level of themselves in order to dig deeper. And in doing so, they uncovered capacities that others never found, not because they did not exist, but because they were never sought. So when life presents you with challenges, do not shrink back. When you are faced with struggle, do not curse it. See it for what it is, a mirror showing you what lies within. You are capable of more than you know, but you will never know until you try, until you risk, until you step beyond what feels possible. The untapped strength within you is waiting to be awakened, and it will only reveal itself when you dare to go beyond your limits.
Would you consider yourself someone who's just waiting for the right time? You know, the right time to start that project, to end that relationship, to move to that city you've dreamed about, or even to simply live the way you secretly want to. You tell yourself, "I'll do it when I'm ready," or "when the timing is perfect." And so you wait. Days pass, months pass, years pass. And then one day, you look back and realize the right time never actually arrived. Because it doesn't exist, it was never meant to. Life doesn't work like that. We humans are masterful at convincing ourselves that the present moment is somehow inadequate for action. We believe we need more certainty, more preparation, more signs from the universe that it's safe to proceed. And in doing so, we miss the only moment that ever truly exists, this one. I want to tell you something you might not like. You will never feel completely ready for anything worth doing. Readiness is not a place you arrive at. It is something that arises because you start. Waiting for the right conditions is like waiting for the ocean to stop moving before you swim. You will wait forever. Think about it. Every major decision in your life, the one that changed everything, probably came with uncertainty, maybe even fear. But you acted anyway. And if you hadn't, you wouldn't be where you are now. This so-called right time we cling to is a mirage. The mind paints it as a safe, golden moment in the future when all obstacles disappear, when courage is effortless, and when success is guaranteed. But the truth is, life is never without risk. Every moment is tinged with unknowns, with imperfect circumstances, with distractions and doubts. That is the human condition. And yet, action has always belonged to those willing to begin despite it. We postpone life in countless ways. I'll travel when I have more money. I'll say how I feel when the moment is perfect. I'll start creating when I've mastered every skill. But in reality, these are excuses dressed as logic. The longer we wait, the heavier the weight becomes. Opportunities fade. Enthusiasm cools. The door we swore we'd walk through one day quietly closes, and we're left wondering why we didn't take a step when it was open. Alan Watts once said, "This is the real secret of life, to be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now. The right time is simply the time you choose to begin." And here's something else. The right time is often a disguise for fear, fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of discomfort. We tell ourselves we're being patient or strategic, but more often than not, we're avoiding the raw vulnerability of action. But here's the paradox. The fear doesn't go away by waiting. It fades only through moving forward. You've probably noticed this. The conversation you dreaded, the leap you feared once you did it, it was never as monstrous as your mind imagined. You realized that the hardest part was simply beginning. Life rewards momentum, not hesitation. Now, imagine your life as a book. If you keep waiting for the right time to start the next chapter, the story never moves. The plot stagnates. And while you wait, the pages keep turning anyway, filled with scenes you didn't choose, written by circumstances rather than by you. At some point, you must accept that the only right time is the one you claim. The longer you hesitate, the more you hand over authorship of your life to chance. And chance doesn't care about your dreams, it simply fills the void you leave. The universe, in all its vast mystery, doesn't send engraved invitations. It sends whispers. It nudges. It places opportunities in front of you, disguised as challenges, detours, or imperfect conditions. And if you're too busy waiting for a perfect sign, you'll miss them. People imagine that the universe is withholding their destiny until they've earned it. But in reality, the universe is always offering, always flowing. It's our hesitation, our clinging to the fantasy of later, that keeps us from receiving it. Here's something radical. You don't need more time to start. You need less waiting. The conditions you think you need are often revealed after you begin, not before. You learn by doing, not by endlessly preparing. The courage you believe you lack appears the moment you step forward. The skills you think you need to master are sharpened in the act itself. Action is the alchemy that transforms fear into clarity, uncertainty into direction. Without it, you remain in the purgatory of someday, a place where nothing grows except regret. Think of all the people who told themselves they'd start when they were ready, only to watch someone with less experience, less certainty, and fewer resources leap ahead simply because they acted. The difference between them isn't talent or luck. It's the willingness to begin in the midst of imperfection. And here's the thing. Life doesn't favor the one who waits. It favors the one who shows up, even if they stumble, even if they fail. Because failure, at least, moves you forward. Waiting keeps you still. The problem with waiting for the right time is that it tricks you into believing you have infinite tomorrows. But you don't. Life is not a rehearsal for something better. Later, this is the show. The clock is ticking whether you participate or not. And one day, the one day you were waiting for will simply be gone. You'll realize that the perfect conditions you imagined were never coming, and that the years you thought you were preparing were actually the years you were living. There's a kind of heartbreak in that, but also a kind of awakening. Because once you see that the right time is a myth, you're free. Free from the illusion that your life begins later. free from the idea that you need permission to start. And in that freedom, you begin to act. You start the book without knowing the ending. You take the trip without a perfect plan. You say the words without rehearsing them 1,000 times in your head. And yes, you might stumble. Yes, you might fail. But even then, you'll be really living instead of waiting. The moment you choose to act, the waiting ends. I want you to think of a river. If you stand on the bank forever, waiting for the water to calm before you step in, you'll be there for eternity. The river doesn't stop moving. It doesn't care about your readiness. It only offers you the choice. Step in now or watch it pass. Life is no different. The current will keep flowing. People will come and go. Opportunities will appear and vanish. And the only thing you can truly lose is the chance you never take. The river doesn't wait for you. So why do you wait for it? It's worth asking yourself honestly, what exactly are you waiting for? More money? More confidence? A sign from the universe? Those might seem like legitimate reasons, but often they're disguises for fear. You think you're waiting for resources, but you're really waiting for certainty. And certainty is something life almost never gives. In fact, certainty tends to show up after you leap, not before. You've experienced this. The courage comes in the doing, not in the waiting. Yet still, we cling to the fantasy that one morning we'll wake up feeling completely fearless, ready to conquer the day. It's a lie. The truth is, readiness is created through action. You become ready because you began, not the other way around. The person who learns to swim doesn't wait until they're a perfect swimmer to enter the water they get in. They splash, they choke a little, and they learn. Life works exactly the same way. The path to confidence, clarity, and even mastery starts with one imperfect step. That step feels uncomfortable because it is supposed to. It's the discomfort that shapes you. And while you wait for the right time, someone else is taking that step and changing their life. Now, there's something dangerous about postponing life that many people overlook. Waiting becomes a habit. The more you delay, the more natural it feels to delay again. Before you know it, you're not just waiting for the right time to do something important, you're waiting for the right time to live. And the tragedy is that time never arrives. Because life will always give you a reason to wait. There will always be bills, responsibilities, uncertainty, and imperfections. If you make waiting your default, you'll reach the end wondering when your life actually happened. The irony is that while you're waiting for the perfect time, life itself is happening. The sunsets you could be watching, the conversations you could be having, the moments you could be creating, they're unfolding right now without you. And they will never repeat in exactly the same way. The people you love will not always be here. The opportunities in front of you will not always be there. This is not meant to scare you, but to wake you up. If you knew you had only a year left, would you still be waiting? Or would you start? The right time doesn't exist for another reason. You are always changing. The version of you that's waiting today will not be the same version that finally decides to act. And sometimes, by the time you feel ready, the thing you wanted has already slipped through your fingers. We forget that desire has a lifespan. Dreams can expire if neglected for too long. What felt urgent and alive at 25 might be nothing but a faded curiosity at 40. The question is, will you answer the call while it's still burning in you, or will you let it die quietly? Here's the strange thing. You'll never regret starting too early as much as you'll regret starting too late. Beginning before you feel ready might give you some awkward mistakes, some wrong turns, but beginning too late robs you of years you can never reclaim. Time has a way of erasing the luxury of hesitation, the projects you never began, the people you never called, the love you never confessed. They don't sit patiently on the shelf waiting for you. They vanish quietly while you're busy making plans. The lesson? You can correct a mistake. You cannot reclaim a moment. Many people confuse waiting for the right time with being strategic. I'm just thinking it through, they say, but often thinking it through is just overthinking it out of existence. You can plan so much that the fire dies before you've even lit the match. Action creates momentum. Planning without action creates only a thicker wall between you and your life. Of course, some planning is necessary, but you must know the tipping point where it shifts from useful to paralyzing. Cross that point, and the dream you had is already starting to fade into nothing more than an idea. I've spoken to countless people who say they want to write, travel, start a business, fall in love, and yet they've been preparing for years. They don't realize that their preparation is simply another name for avoidance. They're waiting for courage to knock on the door, but courage doesn't knock. It's built moment by moment as you step into the thing you fear. The truth is, you cannot think yourself into bravery. You can only act your way into it. And that means taking the first step without knowing exactly where the second one will land. Why do we fear starting before the right time? Because it feels safer to stay in the realm of potential. As long as your dream is in your head, it's perfect. It hasn't been tested, judged, or rejected. The moment you act, reality has a say, and reality is unpredictable. But here's the paradox. Reality is also where all the good things live. Love, joy, connection, discovery, none of these exist in the safety of your imagination. They require you to step into the messy, unpredictable now. Potential is perfect, yes, but it's also lifeless. Only action breathes life into it. There's an ancient Zen saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. It applies to almost everything in life. You can't go back and start earlier. You can only start now imperfectly, messily, vulnerably. And if you truly understand this, you stop torturing yourself with regret over the past. You stop saying, if only I had started sooner. Instead, you say, I'm starting now and that's enough. The only moment you can ever act is the one you're in. So if not now, when? I remember a conversation with a man who said he was waiting until retirement to really live, to travel, to write, to explore. He had it all mapped out, work hard now, enjoy life later. But later never came. A sudden illness took him before his right time arrived. And that's the danger. You are not promised later. Later is an assumption. Now is the only guarantee. The right time you're banking on might never show up. And in the meantime, the life you could be living is passing by like scenery from a train you forgot to board. So, what happens when you stop waiting? Life expands. You start to see possibility everywhere because you're no longer filtering it through, is this the perfect time? Instead, you're asking, is this worth doing now? And more often than not, the answer is yes. You begin to realize that starting is the thing that makes time right, not the other way around. You also discover that most fears dissolve once you're in motion. The phone call you dreaded, the trip you kept postponing, the conversation you were avoiding once you're in them, they're never as terrifying as they seemed in your head. Let me be clear. I'm not saying you should be reckless. I'm saying that waiting for perfection is far riskier than acting in imperfection. Life rewards movement. It rewards those who show up, even with shaking hands and uncertain steps. The opportunities that change everything often appear when you're already in motion, not when you're sitting on the sidelines. And here's the beauty. Once you start, the so-called right time has a way of appearing in hindsight. You look back and think, that was exactly when I needed to begin, even if, at the time, it felt far too early. The truth is, there is no finish line where you suddenly feel ready for life. Readiness is not a destination, it's a habit. It's built every time you choose to act in the face of doubt. Every time you do the thing before you feel qualified. Every time you decide that the cost of waiting is greater than the cost of beginning. And with each of these choices, you discover that life isn't something you prepare for endlessly. It's something you participate in right now. Consider this. Life doesn't wait for you to be ready to throw challenges in your path. The unexpected illness, the sudden job change, the person who walks away, none of these events pause to check your calendar first. They arrive unannounced, and you deal with them in the moment. If life's difficulties don't wait for you to be ready, why should its opportunities? Waiting for the right time assumes the universe will align itself neatly for your plans. But the universe doesn't work that way. It offers openings in the middle of chaos, and your job is to notice and step in. Some of you might be thinking, but what if I fail? And I understand. Failure is embarrassing. It stings. But failure is also a compass. It points you toward the adjustments you need to make. The people who create lives they're proud of aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who stop seeing failure as an ending and start seeing it as feedback. Each attempt, each stumble, each awkward first step is a teacher. And you cannot meet that teacher if you never leave the safety of the classroom of your mind. There's another hidden danger in waiting for the right time. You can accidentally become addicted to waiting itself. It's comforting to think you're almost ready. You get the sense of progress without taking the risks of progress. It's like rocking in a chair. You're moving, but you're going nowhere. And while you wait, the energy you once had fades. Enthusiasm is perishable. Leave it too long and it spoils into apathy. The window for action is often smaller than we think, not because life closes it, but because we stop feeling the urgency to step through. Think of the great stories you've heard in books, in films, in your own life. Do they begin with the hero saying, "I waited until the right moment"? No. They begin when someone, often unprepared, says yes to the moment in front of them. That yes sets everything in motion. You might believe you need more confidence before you can act, but here's the paradox. Action breeds confidence, not the other way around. The first step gives you proof that you can survive the unknown. The second step builds trust in yourself. And soon you stop asking if you're ready, you just go. Now, here's something practical. If you're someone who waits endlessly, start by shrinking the scale of what you think beginning means. You don't have to write the whole book today, write one paragraph. You don't have to run a marathon, take a 10-minute walk. The right time often hides inside small beginnings. These small starts teach you that perfection is not required for progress. And they're much harder to delay because they feel so doable. Once you start stacking small actions, momentum takes over, and suddenly you've begun without the fanfare you thought you needed. I once knew a woman who dreamed of moving to another country. For years, she said she was waiting until she saved a certain amount, until she learned the language perfectly, until she had a job lined up. The years passed. Her savings grew, her language skills improved, but the perfect moment never came. One day, she admitted the truth. She wasn't waiting for the right time. She was waiting for the fear to disappear. And fear never disappears completely. It only changes shape once you're moving through it. She finally went, not because the fear was gone, but because she realized it never would be. Fear will follow you into every chapter of life worth living. Love, creativity, adventure, they all demand that you feel fear and move anyway. If you wait to act, until you feel no fear, you'll be waiting forever. The trick is to stop asking for fearlessness and start asking for willingness. Willingness to look foolish, willingness to learn publicly, willingness to fail in the service of something that matters to you. This shift in focus turns waiting into moving. You stop trying to avoid discomfort and instead see it as a sign you're finally stepping into your life. The irony is that once you start living this way, you begin to see time differently. You no longer see life as a series of safe waiting rooms where you prepare for the real thing. You realize the waiting room was the real thing all along and you were wasting it. Every conversation, every sunrise, every mistake is part of the main event. The so-called right time is now because now is the only time you have. The people who embrace this truth don't necessarily live longer lives, but they live wider ones, filled with moments they seized instead of postponed. Let me leave you with a challenge. Think of one thing you've been postponing because the right time hasn't arrived. It could be calling someone you miss, starting a project you've been daydreaming about, or telling the truth you've been avoiding. Now, instead of asking, "Is this the perfect moment?" ask, "What small step can I take toward this today?" Then do it. Don't wait until Monday. Don't wait for the new year. Don't wait for more money, more approval, more certainty. If you can take one small step now, you have already broken the spell of waiting. You might feel clumsy at first. You might make mistakes. You might even wish you'd waited longer. But as time passes, you'll notice something. Those imperfect steps created a life that's real instead of one that's just imagined. And the joy of reality, even with its flaws, is far richer than the sterile perfection of an untested dream. The right time is not a date on the calendar. It's a decision you make to participate fully in your own existence. Every day you choose to do that, you've chosen the perfect moment. So, will you keep waiting? Waiting for fear to vanish? For the plan to be flawless? For the universe to send you a personal invitation? Or will you accept that the invitation is already here, hidden in this moment? The choice is yours. But I will tell you this, years from now, you will remember the day you began, not the day you planned to begin. You will look back and see that the so-called wrong time was exactly when your life truly started, and you will be grateful you didn't wait any longer. I'll end with one last thought. The right time is a mirage. You can chase it forever, thinking it's just over the next hill, only to find it was never real. What's real is now. What's real is the beating of your heart, the breath in your lungs, the chances within reach. If you keep postponing, you will reach the end having never actually arrived. But if you start now, even awkwardly, even without certainty, you will have lived. And in the end, that's the only measure that matters, not how perfectly you timed your life, but how deeply you lived it. So, take the call, write the sentence, book the ticket, say the words, start the thing. Not because everything is ready, but because you are tired of missing your own life. There is no dress rehearsal. This is it. And the clock is not pausing for you to feel ready. The only time you have is the time you take. So take it, now. And as you step forward, remember, the right time isn't coming. It's here. It's always been here. And the moment you stop waiting for a perfect future and begin living in the imperfect present, you will discover that life was never about timing at all. It was about showing up. And now, at last, you have. What if you are God, dreaming you are human? Now, don't accept this as a doctrine or cling to it as a belief. Instead, play with it as you would play with a story, a thought experiment. Because if you look deeply into this possibility, you begin to see how it explains the peculiar comedy of existence, the joys and tragedies, and why things are exactly as they are. Think of it. If you were God, if you were all, powerful, all-knowing, infinite, you would soon become terribly bored. For imagine knowing everything, being everything, and having no surprise. Perfection sounds pleasant for a time, but it would grow monotonous, like watching the same play over and over without variation. So, what would you do? You would invent a game. You would create the grandest hide-and-seek ever conceived. You would hide from yourself. You would forget who you are, and you would pretend to be many men, women, animals, plants, stars. Each life would be a mask of your own being. And in this great drama, you would immerse yourself so deeply in the part that you would forget it was a play. You would forget that you were the actor behind all the masks. For if you remembered too easily, the game would lose its thrill. It would be like reading the last page of a mystery novel, first spoiling the whole story. So you agreed with yourself, I shall forget, I shall live as though I am only this body, only this mind. I shall fear, I shall hope, I shall strive, and then, one day, I will remember. This is the dream you are living right now. You, the infinite self, God if you like, are pretending to be human. And in pretending, you are not less, you are more. Because God as God cannot experience limitation, cannot taste the thrill of uncertainty, cannot feel the poignancy of loss. Only by becoming human, by playing the role of mortality, can the infinite know what it is to love, to fear, to hope, to die. And so, here you are, believing yourself to be a separate person. And that belief is the very essence of the game. Now, this raises a curious question. If life is God playing hide and seek with itself, then what is death? Death is the moment the mask is lifted. The curtain falls, and you step backstage to remember the truth. It was all play. That does not make it meaningless. Quite the contrary, it makes it precious. For the actor loves the role, even knowing it is not ultimate. In fact, the role is sweeter because it ends. The tragedy more moving because it is fleeting. Death, then, is not the end of you. It is the end of the dream. And after death, why, you choose another role, another mask, another dream, and again you forget. Because that is the thrill of the whole game, to wake up and to fall asleep over and over like breathing. This is why the Hindus speak of the universe as Leela, divine play, God playing hide and seek with itself, God forgetting and remembering, God dreaming itself as all things. And in this dream, every joy, every sorrow, every triumph and disaster is part of the drama. For what fun would a play be if nothing ever went wrong, if the plot had no twists? Now, some will protest, but if I am God, why would I create such suffering? Why would I choose pain? The answer is simple, because without contrast, nothing is experienced at all. Without darkness, light is unnoticed. Without silence, sound has no shape. Without sorrow, joy has no sweetness. Suffering is not a punishment, it is the shadow that makes the dance visible. When you understand this, suffering does not vanish, but it takes on a new quality. You see that it too belongs, that it too is part of the dream, part of the play of the self. So here is the great reversal. You are not a fragile creature at the mercy of a vast universe. You are the vast universe pretending to be a fragile creature. You are not a small wave lost in the ocean. You are the ocean, playing at being a wave. This is what the mystics mean when they say, Tattvam Asi, you are that. You are the eternal consciousness behind all appearances, and this life, with its struggles, is your chosen disguise. Not chosen by the small you who remembers little, but by the deeper self who is all. And if you see this even for a moment, it changes how you live. You no longer take yourself quite so seriously, as though your failures and embarrassments were cosmic tragedies. You laugh more. You forgive more easily, because you realize that this too is the game. You are God pretending to be a person, and everyone else is God pretending too. That stranger on the street, that enemy, that friend, they are masks of you. Different disguises in the same play. And when you begin to see this, compassion arises naturally. For how could you hate your own self? Imagine for a moment that tonight you dream, and in your dream, you forget it is a dream. You live an entire lifetime. You are born, you grow, you suffer, you love, you die. And then you wake astonished. Would you say that dream was unreal? No, it was real, for it was experienced. So too with this life. It is a dream, but not in the sense of a fake illusion. It is real as experience. It is God's dream of being human. And one day, you will awaken to realize it was always yourself. Now, notice the strange paradox. If this life is God's dream, then you are both the dreamer and the dreamt. You are the actor and the role. The problem only comes when you identify exclusively with the role, forgetting the actor. Then the tragedies feel unbearable, the conflicts endless. But when you remember even slightly that you are the dreamer as well, then everything takes on a lighter quality. You can still play the game fully, but with a kind of inner laughter. For deep down you know, this is me, pretending. This is me, wearing a mask. And you see, even the forgetting is part of the design. If you remembered constantly that you are God in disguise, the play would collapse. You would lose interest. It would be like watching a film, but knowing every line in advance. So you agreed to forget. You agreed to believe this dream fully. And that is why it feels so real. Because it must. A dream only works if you are convinced while inside it that it is reality. And this dream of being human is the most convincing dream of all. Think about your own nighttime dreams. When you are in them, you rarely question them. If a lion chases you, your heart races, your body sweats, your fear is real. Only upon waking do you laugh and say, it was only a dream. But what if this waking life is the same? What if, when you die, you laugh and say, it was only another dream? And what if you then realize the dreamer was always you, the Godhead, the eternal self, trying on yet another mask in the cosmic theater of existence? Now, some will say, but if I am God, why do I not feel like it? Because feeling like God is not the point of the game. The point is to feel like you, precisely as you are. If you always felt infinite, immortal, invulnerable, there would be no drama. But to feel limited, fragile, temporary, that is where the richness lies. That is where the story gains texture. A story without struggle, without vulnerability, would not move you. You need the risk, the uncertainty, the shadow to make the light worth seeing. So, the invitation is not to escape the dream, nor to despise it. It is to see it as play, to live fully, as though it matters, but also with the awareness that beneath it all, you are not diminished. The pain may come, the losses may sting, but the one who plays all roles cannot be harmed by any single one. Just as an actor can die 1,000 deaths on stage and yet rise for applause, so too you die in dream after dream but remain untouched, for you are the dreamer. And here lies the deepest comfort. No matter how dark it becomes, no matter how frightening, it is still play. A terrifying play perhaps, a tragic one, but play nonetheless. And knowing this does not cheapen your life, it enriches it, because you see that nothing is wasted. Every tear, every mistake, every joy, every heartbreak is part of the unfolding. You are not here to win or lose. You are here to experience, to taste the full spectrum, to dance every dance, laugh every laugh, shed every tear, and through it, to know yourself in all ways. This is why the mystics smile, not because they deny suffering, but because they glimpse its context. They see that suffering too belongs to the dream, and that beyond it, the self remains whole. That you are not merely this person struggling to survive, you are the totality playing at being this person. And when you understand this, life no longer feels like a burden to be endured. It becomes a play to be enjoyed, even in its difficult acts. For even tragedy in art has its beauty. Even sorrow in music has its harmony. So what happens when you die? You awaken, and for a moment you remember, yes, I was playing that role. And then, like any actor who loves the stage, you step back into costume. You choose another mask, another dream, another lifetime. And again you forget, because forgetting is the rule of the game. Only by forgetting can you remember. Only by sleeping can you wake. Only by losing yourself can you rediscover yourself. And thus the cycle continues, endlessly, joyfully God dreaming, God awakening, God dreaming again. Now, one might ask, if I am God dreaming, does that mean everything is my responsibility? Am I guilty for every cruelty, every injustice? No, for you are not only the victim, you are also the perpetrator and the bystander and the healer. You are playing every part. It is not about guilt. It is about exploration. For how could you know compassion unless you felt cruelty? How could you know forgiveness unless you experienced betrayal? How could you know courage unless you faced fear? Every role deepens the whole. Every mask expands the play. And so, you see, you are not trapped. You are not merely a pawn in a hostile universe. You are the universe itself, playing hide and seek with your own face. What a grand joke. What a wild game. And if you can sense this, even faintly, you can live differently. You can take your joys more deeply, your sorrows more lightly. You can laugh in the face of despair, not because it is trivial, but because it too belongs. And perhaps in that laughter, you will recognize the one who laughs, the dreamer behind the dream. And so here you are, playing the role of you, waking each day convinced of your name, your story, your past, and you must play it convincingly, otherwise the play falls flat. But deep within, there is always the faint whisper, this is not all, this is not the whole of me. That whisper is the dreamer reminding you just a little of who you are. Not to spoil the game, but to comfort you when the play becomes too heavy. To let you know that however dark the dream seems, the dreamer cannot be harmed. Think of children playing pretend. One plays the doctor, one the pirate, one the princess. They throw themselves into the parts, and yet, if one falls and cries, the others immediately drop the game to comfort them. Why? Because beneath the masks, they know they are still friends. Life is the same. We are all playing roles, yet behind the masks, we are the same being. And when you glimpse this, compassion flows. For you see the villain as another mask of yourself, and the suffering of others as your own dream calling out for kindness. And perhaps this is the greatest secret. You don't need to awaken fully from the dream to live differently. You need only remember now and then, to catch the playfulness of it, to see the masks for what they are. Then you can dance with life instead of dragging it like a burden. You can laugh at the absurdities, weep at the tragedies, rejoice in the joys, all while knowing somewhere deep that none of it can truly diminish you. For you are not the mask. You are the one wearing it. You are the dreamer. So it means you are not trapped in some meaningless accident. You are participating in the most extraordinary play imaginable, the play of forgetting and remembering, of losing and finding, of dying and being born again. It means that your struggles are not in vain. They are part of the adventure. It means that when you love, you are God loving God. When you laugh, you are God delighting in its own play. And when you die, you are God waking up from one dream to dream another. And so the invitation is simple. Live this life as though it matters, because it does, but do not cling to it as though it were all you are, for it is not. You are the actor, not only the role. You are the dreamer, not only the dream. And when you know this, you can throw yourself into the play with abandon, with courage, with joy. For the secret is, you cannot lose. You are always already the self, the Godhead, the eternal dreamer. And this life is your masterpiece, unfolding moment by moment.
Love, at its deepest essence, is not something that simply happens to us. It is something that reveals us to ourselves. When we fall in love, when we truly open our hearts to another human being, something extraordinary takes place. We begin to see more than just the person standing before us. We begin to see ourselves reflected in their eyes, in their reactions, in the very way they experience us. Every relationship, whether it lasts a lifetime or only a fleeting moment, becomes a mirror showing us aspects of ourselves that we may have never noticed or may have even tried to hide. Think about it when you love someone. You notice how deeply you can feel, how vulnerable you can become, how much joy and how much fear can arise from the same heart. This is not accidental. Love pushes us to recognize the parts of ourselves that ordinary life often leaves untouched. It pulls us into a space where the masks we wear, our defenses, our roles, our carefully constructed identities, begin to crack. In the presence of love, we cannot help but be revealed. And in that revelation, self-discovery begins. Most of the time, we believe that knowing ourselves comes from introspection alone, by sitting quietly, by reflecting on our thoughts, by analyzing our choices. While that is a part of it, love gives us something far more powerful, an immediate and undeniable reflection of who we are in the moment. When we are kind, it shows us. When we are jealous, it reveals it. When we are capable of sacrifice, patience, or forgiveness, love draws these qualities out of us and places them right in front of our awareness. It's as if the person we love becomes a living reminder of both our greatest potential and our deepest limitations. And here lies the paradox. Love feels as though it is about the other person, yet it simultaneously reveals the vast landscape of our own soul. We cannot separate the two. In learning to love another, we uncover the layers of our being, our capacity for tenderness, our fear of loss, our hunger for connection, our resistance to surrender. Love uncovers the hidden territories of the heart, places we would never have reached if not for the mirror of another's presence. But this discovery is not always comfortable. In fact, it is often profoundly unsettling. To see yourself reflected so clearly can be overwhelming. We may see our insecurities magnified, our impatience exposed, our selfishness brought into the light. This is why many people resist love, or try to control it, or attempt to reduce it to a safe, predictable pattern. Because real love is dangerous. It threatens the illusions we have about ourselves. It doesn't allow us to remain comfortably numb behind our self-image. Instead, it breaks us open, forcing us to face what is real. Yet it is in this breaking open that the true gift lies. For what is self-discovery, if not the courage to see ourselves as we are? To see both the beauty and the brokenness, the strength and the fragility, without turning away. Love gives us that chance. It is not just about the blissful moments of passion or the comfort of companionship. It is about the way another human being calls us to recognize our own depths. Every joy shared, every conflict endured, every silence held together teaches us something about who we are becoming. In this way, love is a kind of spiritual education. It teaches not through books or theories, but through raw experience. The laughter, the tears, the arguments, the reconciliations, these are all lessons, each one peeling back another layer of our identity. Through them, we come to see what we truly value, what we truly fear, and what we truly long for. Without love, we might never confront these truths with such intensity. And so, when we speak of love as a pathway to self-understanding, we are not speaking in poetic metaphor alone. We are speaking of a living, breathing reality. Love is the fire that tests us, the mirror that reveals us, the river that carries us deeper into our own being. It is through loving another that we come closer to knowing ourselves, not in the abstract sense of ideas, but in the living truth of our hearts. Because ultimately, to love is to discover the limits of our patience, the depth of our compassion, the strength of our courage, and the vulnerability of our longing. Love shows us what we are capable of, both in the light and in the shadows. And in that revelation, if we are willing to stay open, we find the beginnings of real self-knowledge. That is why love is never just about another person. It is about the awakening it stirs within us, the recognition that in seeing another clearly, we are in fact seeing ourselves. And once that discovery has begun, nothing can ever quite be the same. Love, then, is the beginning of the journey home to ourselves. We live with a deep longing inside us, a quiet ache that whispers, if only I had this person, if only I was loved in this way, then I would finally feel complete. So much of our search for love is built on this idea that someone else will arrive and fill the emptiness within us. We imagine love as a kind of solution, an answer to the loneliness we carry, a medicine that will make all our wounds disappear. But here lies the great misunderstanding. No one, no matter how deeply they love us, can ever make us whole. That work belongs to us alone. When we approach love as a way to complete ourselves, we place an impossible burden on the other person. We expect them to become our savior, our healer, our endless source of happiness. And for a moment, perhaps in the beginning, it feels as though this is true. The rush of passion, the sweetness of being seen, the comfort of companionship, it all creates the illusion that the emptiness has been filled. But as time passes, something begins to shift. The intensity fades, the old insecurities return, and we realize that what we thought had been healed was only hidden. It is in this moment that many people become disillusioned. They think, perhaps this was not the right person. Perhaps someone else will finally make me feel whole. And so they search again, moving from one relationship to another, chasing that initial spark, that fleeting sense of completion. But the pattern repeats itself. Why? Because the problem is not the other person. The problem is the expectation that anyone outside of us could resolve what lies unresolved within. True love cannot grow in this soil of expectation. It withers under the pressure of being forced to carry the weight of our unfinished selves. Real love requires two individuals who stand in their own wholeness, who have faced the emptiness inside and come to peace with it. Only then can love become an authentic sharing rather than a desperate search for completion. This is why self-discovery is inseparable from love. If we do not first turn inward, if we do not learn to understand the patterns of our own hearts, we will forever be caught in the illusion of external fulfillment. We will keep mistaking love as something we must get, rather than something we are able to give. And when love is approached in this way, it becomes transactional. I give you affection so that you will take away my loneliness. But love is never meant to be a transaction. It is meant to be an overflowing, a natural expression of the fullness we have already found within. Think of it like this. If you carry a cup that is half empty, you will always look to others to pour into it, to keep you satisfied. But if you carry a cup that is already full, then what you offer in love is not a demand. It is a gift. You are no longer saying, "Complete me," but instead, "Let us share what is already abundant within us." And that changes everything. This does not mean we must become perfect before we can love. Perfection is not the point. What matters is that we recognize the illusion that no person can be responsible for making us whole. When we awaken to this truth, we stop clinging so tightly. We stop fearing loss so desperately, and we stop demanding from love what it was never meant to give. Instead, we approach love with freedom, with lightness, with the joy of sharing our journey with another human being who is also discovering themselves. And here is the beautiful paradox. When we stop demanding that love complete us, we actually experience a deeper intimacy. Why? Because we are no longer looking to the other person as a means to an end. We are no longer blinded by the need to fix ourselves through them. Instead, we can see them clearly as they are, without the haze of expectation. And in that clarity, love becomes more real, more grounded, more alive. This is the difference between clinging and embracing. Clinging says, "Don't leave me, because without you I am nothing." Embracing says, "I choose to walk with you, not because I need you to complete me, but because in your presence I discover new dimensions of myself." One is born of fear, the other of freedom. One suffocates love, the other allows it to flourish. And so, the journey is not about finding someone who will heal us. It is about healing ourselves enough that we can meet love without illusion. Only then do we see love not as a remedy for our emptiness, but as a celebration of our fullness. Only then do we realize that the love we have been searching for outside has always been waiting within us, quietly, patiently, until we are ready to recognize it. And when that recognition dawns, love ceases to be a desperate pursuit and becomes instead a graceful discovery. A discovery not of completion, but of the beauty that unfolds when two whole beings meet and choose to share the mystery of life together. Because no one can complete you. That is a truth you must discover, for your self-love is never without risk, and it is in that risk that its greatest power lies. To love is to step into uncertainty, to expose the tender parts of ourselves that we usually keep hidden from the world. We are trained in so many ways to protect ourselves, to guard our hearts, to wear the masks that make us seem strong, untouchable, in control. Yet when love comes, all those defenses begin to dissolve. Suddenly we find ourselves standing unguarded, vulnerable, aware of how deeply we can be hurt and how easily we can lose. And it is precisely here, in this fragile openness, that self-discovery begins to take root. Vulnerability is often mistaken for weakness. People think that to open themselves is to risk being broken, to allow others to take advantage of their softness. But in truth, vulnerability is one of the greatest forms of courage. To let another see you as you are, not just your polished exterior, but your doubts, your fears, your insecurities, is to embrace a kind of honesty that is terrifying and liberating at the same time. It is in this raw space of honesty that we begin to meet ourselves more fully. Love demands this of us. It calls us out of hiding. It does not allow us to stay behind walls of pride or fear. It insists that we show up as we are, that we let another person look into the depths of us. And when we do, something remarkable happens. We see that the parts of ourselves we thought were unworthy of being seen, our flaws, our imperfections, our hidden wounds, can actually be embraced, accepted, and even cherished. This acceptance begins to dissolve the shame we carry, the shame that keeps us from knowing ourselves deeply. But vulnerability is not only about being seen by someone else. It is about being willing to see ourselves without flinching. Love creates situations where this becomes unavoidable. When jealousy rises, when anger flares, when fear of abandonment creeps in, these are not signs that something has gone wrong. They are invitations to look more deeply into who we are. Every conflict, every struggle, every uncomfortable feeling in love is an opportunity for growth, if we are willing to face it with openness instead of denial. And this is where self-discovery through love becomes truly transformative. Because to love deeply is not only to share moments of joy, but to walk together through discomfort, to learn patience, forgiveness, and resilience. Each challenge in love mirrors something within us. If we run from these moments, we run from ourselves. But if we stay, if we choose to face what arises, we uncover strengths we never knew we had. We learn that vulnerability is not the end of us. It is the beginning of becoming more whole. Consider the way a seed grows. For it to sprout, it must crack open. That breaking is not its destruction, but the very condition of its growth. In the same way, our hearts must crack open in love. The breaking we fear so much is not an end, but a transformation. Vulnerability is the soil in which compassion, wisdom, and true intimacy can take root. Without it, love remains shallow, a surface exchange that never touches the depths of who we are. With it, love becomes the greatest teacher of self-discovery we will ever encounter. And yet, many of us resist. We close ourselves off when things get difficult. We retreat into old patterns. We defend ourselves with anger. We avoid the rawness that love demands. Why? Because it feels safer to protect the heart than to risk breaking it. But what we call safety is often a prison. Behind those walls, we may not be hurt, but we also cannot grow. Love asks us to choose differently, to risk the break so that we may discover the life waiting on the other side of it. This does not mean that love will always be easy, or that vulnerability will always be rewarded in the way we expect. Sometimes we will be hurt. Sometimes we will be rejected. Sometimes the very act of opening ourselves will bring pain. But even then, the discovery remains. Because each experience of vulnerability, whether it ends in joy or sorrow, teaches us more about who we are, what we value, and how deeply we are capable of feeling. In this way, love and vulnerability are inseparable from growth. They strip away the illusions we carry about ourselves and demand that we confront the truth of our humanity. They show us that our strength does not lie in avoiding pain, but in our capacity to endure it, to learn from it, to emerge from it more open than before. And in this opening, we come closer to living authentically, to embracing life not as a series of defenses, but as a continuous unfolding of the self. So when you find yourself trembling in love, when you feel exposed, uncertain, fragile, that is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that you are alive, that you are learning, that you are touching the edges of your own becoming. It is a reminder that vulnerability is not the end of love, but the doorway through which love reveals who you truly are. To love is to be vulnerable, and to be vulnerable is to grow. Love is not something separate from the journey of discovering who we are. It is woven into the very fabric of it. When we speak of authenticity, of living in alignment with our true selves, we cannot separate that from love. Because love, at its essence, is not merely an emotion we feel for another person. It is the way we open ourselves to life, the way we dissolve the walls between ourselves and the world. And in that openness, we discover what it means to be real, to be whole, to be alive in the deepest sense. Most people think of love as a special relationship, a bond that exists only between two people. And yes, love flourishes in relationships. But its meaning goes beyond that. Love is not something we have for another. It is something we become when we live authentically. When we stop pretending, when we stop playing roles, when we let go of the masks and defenses we cling to, we find that what remains is love itself. It is not a performance, not a possession, not something we bargain for. It is the natural expression of being in harmony with who we truly are. This is why love and self-discovery cannot be separated. To discover ourselves is to discover love, because love is the ground of our being. It is not that we find ourselves first and then learn to love, or that we love first and then learn to find ourselves. They are the same unfolding. As we open to love, we become more real. As we become more real, we open more fully to love. It is a cycle that deepens and deepens, drawing us closer to authenticity. But authenticity can feel frightening. To live authentically means to let go of the need to please, the need to conform, the need to hide behind ideas of who we think we should be. And love has a way of pushing us right into this challenge. When we love someone deeply, we want to be known, we want to be seen, we want to offer ourselves without pretense. Yet to do that means to risk rejection, to risk not being accepted for who we truly are. This is where the courage of love lies. Love asks us to stand in the truth of ourselves, even when it feels uncertain. And what happens when we do? Something profound. We find that authenticity invites authenticity. When we dare to be real, we give others permission to do the same. In this way, love becomes a space where both people are freed from the weight of pretenses, where life itself becomes lighter, more honest, more alive. To live this way is not to escape difficulty or pain, but to meet it without the heavy burden of pretending. It is to allow joy and sorrow, passion and fear, all to flow through us without the need to control or disguise them. This is the freedom of authentic love, and it is not limited to personal relationships. When we begin to live in love and authenticity, it touches everything. The way we walk through the world changes. We approach life not as a battlefield where we must defend ourselves, but as a dance where we can participate fully. We no longer see others as threats or competitors, but as fellow travelers, mirrors of the same humanity that we are discovering in ourselves. This shift transforms the smallest interactions, an exchange with a stranger, a moment of silence with a friend, the act of simply being present with another living being. All of it becomes infused with the light of authenticity, which is the light of love. In this sense, love is not just something we practice with the people closest to us. It is a way of being. And when love becomes our way of being, self-discovery ceases to be a private struggle. It becomes a shared unfolding. We find ourselves in the laughter of another, in the tenderness of a touch, in the courage to forgive, in the willingness to let go. Each of these moments is not separate from who we are. It is the expression of who we are becoming. This is why love is not just an addition to life, but the very heart of it. To live without love, or to live without authenticity, is to live half asleep, disconnected from the truth of ourselves. But to embrace love and authenticity together is to awaken to the richness of being human. It is to realize that the search for meaning, for purpose, for belonging, all converges in this single discovery that to live fully is to love deeply, and to love deeply is to live authentically. And so, the journey of love and self-discovery is not about finding something outside of ourselves, nor is it about retreating into isolation. It is about the meeting point, where who we are within flows naturally into the way we meet the world without. It is about dissolving the illusion of separation and recognizing that the love we give and the authenticity we live are not two different paths, but one and the same. Because in the end, to love truly is to live truly.